The Inheritor's Gambit. Good evening, esteemed listeners. Today we invite you to immerse yourselves in a gripping tale of betrayal, resilience, and unexpected twists. The Inheritor's Gambit. Meet Alex Vance, poised to inherit a vast fortune, until a sinister plot by her cunning Uncle David shatters her world. Witness a daring act of deception, a staged death, and a desperate chase for control. Will Alex outwit her relentless pursuer and uncover the truth, or will she succumb to his dark schemes? Before we dive into this thrilling narrative, remember to hit that subscribe button. The metallic tang of ash still clung to the night air, a phantom whisper of the inferno that had swallowed the Vance family's Rolls-Royce just hours before. For the world, it was a tragic accident, a senseless loss for a philanthropic titan and his beloved wife. For Alexandra Vance, however, it was a meticulously orchestrated illusion, a cruel joke played by the very man who should have been her protector. She watched the news anchors, their faces grim, their voices laced with manufactured sympathy, announce the untimely demise of Jonathan and Eleanor Vance. A dry, humorless laugh threatened to escape her lips. Untimely? Yes. Accidental? Never. Just a week prior, her father, Jonathan, a man whose presence filled any room, had sat across from her in his cavernous study, a look of steely resolve in his normally jovial eyes. "Alex," he'd begun, his voice low, "David is planning something irreversible. He's been tampering with the car." The words, stark and chilling, had hung in the air like an executioner's final decree. Alex, a woman forged in the crucible of corporate boardrooms and high-stakes negotiations, felt a cold dread snake through her. She was accustomed to the cutthroat world of finance, but this was different. This was family. This was blood. Her father, ever the strategist, had then laid out a plan so audacious, so risky, it made her breath catch in her throat. A fake accident, a vanishing act. It was a gamble, a desperate roll of the dice with their lives as the stakes. Now, as the news droned on, depicting her as the orphaned heiress, Alex felt a suffocating cocktail of grief and a terrifying, razor-sharp clarity. Grief, not for a death that hadn't occurred, but for the life she'd lost, the public facade, the comforting normalcy. Clarity because her father's words echoed in her mind. "Don't trust anyone, Alex. Not a soul." He hadn't just spoken of David. His gaze had lingered on the family lawyer, on their longtime household staff, even on the quiet, unassuming family secretary Anna, whose loyalty had seemed unwavering for years. The implication was a heavy cloak, wrapping her in suspicion. Her current sanctuary was a cramped, nondescript apartment in the fringes of downtown Los Angeles, a stark contrast to the sprawling Vance estate she'd grown up in. The scent of stale coffee and desperation hung heavy in the air, a constant reminder of her new, clandestine existence. She pulled a worn, leather-bound journal from beneath a loose floorboard, her father's. It was filled with cryptic notes, corporate jargon interwoven with personal observations, a mosaic of his genius and his paranoia. Her fingers traced the elegant script, a profound ache in her chest. This was more than just a diary, it was a lifeline, a breadcrumb trail to the truth. Earlier that day, fueled by a gnawing unease, Alex had risked a visit to the impound lot, where the charred remains of the Rolls-Royce sat. The air there tasted of burnt rubber and sorrow. The police tape, bright yellow against the blackened metal, felt like a taunt. She'd managed to slip past the distracted attendant, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. Her eyes scanned the wreckage, searching for anything, any anomaly that might confirm her father's elaborate charade. And then she saw it. Not immediately obvious, but unmistakable once her eye caught the glint. A tiny, intricately carved silver phoenix, tucked almost imperceptibly beneath the driver's seat. It was a charm her mother had worn on a necklace, a gift from Jonathan, a symbol of their enduring love and resilience. But its presence here, intact amidst the devastation, was a glaring anomaly. The intense heat of the fire should have melted it, or at least marred its delicate form. Yet it gleamed pristine, a silent testament to a truth only she could comprehend. A wave of bitter-sweet relief washed over her, chilling her to the bone. They were alive. They had to be. But the relief was fleeting, quickly replaced by a surge of terror. If David truly believed they were dead, what would happen next? The game had just begun, and she was alone on the board, a pawn in a deadly gambit, clinging to a silver phoenix as her only beacon in a sea of deceit. Her father's words, "Don't trust anyone," resonated again, a chilling prophecy. The world outside believed her an orphan. David believed her a victim, and Alex, now a ghost in her own life, knew she had to play her part flawlessly for the survival of her family and for the chance to reclaim everything that had been stolen from her. The night stretched before her, an expanse of uncertainty and lurking shadows, each one a potential enemy. She took a deep, shuddering breath. The faint metallic tang of ash, a constant reminder of the inferno she would soon rise from. The small, rented room felt like a cage, its walls closing in on Alex with every passing hour. Each news report, each whispered rumor of David Vance's ruthless consolidation of power tightened the invisible chains around her. The silver phoenix charm, a silent promise clutched tight in her palm, was her only solace, a tiny ember in the suffocating darkness of her new reality. The world mourned the Vances, but David, the serpent in their garden, celebrated. His face, usually a mask of benign indifference, now beamed from magazine covers, a wolf in bespoke clothing, basking in the spotlight of his ill-gotten empire. Alex had been moving constantly, a phantom flitting through the underbelly of Los Angeles, couch surfing with old college acquaintances, sleeping in cheap motels under assumed names. Each night was a ballet of paranoia. Her phone, a burner she replaced weekly, buzzed with anonymous threats. Sometimes it was just a hang-up, a chilling silence. Other times, a distorted voice would hiss, "We know where you are, heiress. Stop running." David's tentacles were long, reaching into every corner of her former life. He had frozen her accounts, severed ties with anyone who dared to show her sympathy, and systematically dismantled the support network she hadn't even realized she possessed until it was gone. Friends evaporated like morning mist. Family members offered hollow apologies, their eyes darting nervously over her shoulder. The Vance name, once a shield, was now a target. Her first desperate act had been to reach out to Mr. Sterling, the family's longtime attorney. Sterling, a man whose silver hair and tailored suits always exuded an aura of unwavering integrity, had been a fixture in her life since childhood. He had guided her parents through countless legal battles, a steadfast guardian of their legacy, but his response had been a cold shower. "Miss Vance," his voice, usually so warm, was now clipped, formal. "I'm terribly sorry for your loss. As for your inquiries, the estate is currently under a temporary conservatorship, as per Mr. Vance's unfortunate passing. All assets are frozen. I'm afraid there's nothing I can do." His words were textbook legal speak, yet beneath them, Alex detected a tremor, a slight hesitation, as if he were reciting lines under duress. He refused to meet her in person, always citing an overflowing schedule, a sudden illness, a pressing out-of-state meeting. The evasiveness was a stark contrast. To his usual unflappable demeanor, it solidified her father's chilling warning. Don't trust anyone. The days bled into weeks, each one a torment of anxiety and dwindling hope. She felt like a hunted animal, cornered and exhausted. David's net was tightening, and she knew with a certainty that settled deep in her bones that he wouldn't stop until she was truly eliminated. The thought of permanent disappearance, of changing her identity and simply fading away, whispered seductively in her ear. But the image of the silver phoenix, the silent promise of her parents' survival, burned brighter, urging her on. She had to fight, not just for herself, but for them. One crisp afternoon, a message arrived on her burner phone. A single word. Library. No sender ID, no context, just library. It was a place she and her father had often visited, a grand, ornate building downtown, a sanctuary of knowledge. It felt like a trap, yet a flicker of hope ignited. Was this a sign from her father, or a lure from David? Her instincts screamed caution, but desperation nudged her forward. She had to take the risk. Dressed in an oversized hoodie and faded jeans, her usually vibrant hair tucked beneath a baseball cap, Alex entered the library. The hushed reverence of the place felt like a mocking echo of her past. She wandered through the towering stacks, her heart thumping against her ribs, and then she saw him, not David himself, but his shadow, a hulking brute named Marcus, David's head of security, a man whose smile never quite reached his eyes. He sat casually at a table, ostensibly reading a newspaper, but his gaze, sharp and predatory, tracked her every move. The air thickened, charged with unspoken menace. David wasn't just after her. He was playing a cat-and-mouse game, enjoying her terror. Alex felt a cold dread creep up her spine. This wasn't just about a chase anymore. It was about humiliation, about breaking her spirit before he broke her body. She considered bolting, losing herself in the labyrinthine streets outside, but then a voice, smooth and chillingly familiar, spoke from behind her. "Alex, how quaint to find you here." It was David. He emerged from behind a bookshelf, his tailored suit a stark contrast to the academic setting. A faint, almost imperceptible smirk played on his lips, a viper tasting victory. Marcus materialized at her other side, cutting off any escape. Alex was trapped, caught between the predator and his enforcer. The quiet sanctity of the library suddenly felt like a tomb. "Uncle David!" Alex's voice was a brittle whisper, betraying none of the furious defiance churning within her. She refused to give him the satisfaction of seeing her fear. "No need for pleasantries, Alex," David purred, his eyes glinting with a predatory satisfaction. "We both know why you're here. The little game of hide-and-seek has run its course." He held up a thick manila envelope. "These are the documents, all the Vance assets, all the subsidiaries, all the intellectual property. A simple signature and this unpleasantness can be over." His words were a velvet-gloved fist, striking at her very core. She knew what those documents meant. The complete and utter surrender of everything her father had built, everything she was meant to inherit. The thought twisted her stomach. But what choice did she have? The cold glint in Marcus's eyes was a stark reminder of the alternative. "And if I refuse?" Alex's voice trembled despite herself. David's smirk widened, revealing a flash of genuine malice. "Then I'm afraid your continued existence would become problematic. Accidents happen, Alex, even to those who are very, very careful." His gaze drifted to Marcus, who nodded imperceptibly, a silent promise of violence. 1,000 thoughts raced through Alex's mind. Fight? Run? Scream? All futile. She was cornered, outmaneuvered. But then, a flicker of her father's strategic brilliance ignited within her. A small detail, something only you and I would understand. She remembered their secret code, a subtle flourish in her signature, a tiny deviation that only her father would ever notice, a silent cry for help embedded within the act of surrender. It was a long shot, a desperate gamble, but it was all she had. She took the pen David offered, her hand steady, belying the storm raging within. The papers blurred before her eyes, transfer deeds, power of attorney, waivers of all future claims. Each line was a nail in the coffin of her family's legacy. With a deep breath, she signed, meticulously adding the almost invisible flourish to the A in Alexandra, a subtle, almost imperceptible curl that mimicked the tail of a phoenix. It was a defiance no one but Jonathan would ever see, a silent scream of hope in the face of absolute despair. As the ink dried, David snatched the documents, his eyes gleaming with triumph. His smile, once merely smug, twisted into a grotesque, triumphant sneer. "Excellent, Alex. You've made the sensible choice." The facade of civility crumbled, revealing the monster beneath. "Marcus, take her to the estate, the remote one. Make sure she's comfortable, and ensure she doesn't try anything foolish. We wouldn't want any loose ends." Alex's blood ran cold. The estate. Not the main one, but the isolated property in the mountains, a place of secluded beauty that now promised to be her tomb. She had signed her life away, and now it seemed her very life was forfeit. The library, once a sanctuary, now felt like a cage, its silent witnesses condemning her to an unknown fate. As Marcus's rough hand clamped around her arm, pulling her away, Alex's eyes met David's. In their depths, she saw not just triumph, but a chilling, murderous intent. He wasn't done with her. This wasn't the end of the coercion. It was merely the beginning of the end. The silver phoenix felt like a stone in her pocket, heavy with a promise she wasn't sure she could keep. The mountain estate, once a haven of tranquility, now felt like a gilded cage. Its sprawling grounds, framed by the skeletal silhouettes of ancient pines, offered no solace, only a panoramic view of Alex's captivity. Marcus, David's brutish shadow, was her constant companion, his presence a suffocating blanket. He wasn't cruel, not overtly, but his impassive gaze and the way his hand instinctively hovered near the holster on his hip were constant reminders of her precarious situation. Each sunrise brought with it the chilling realization that another day had passed without escape, another day closer to whatever grim fate David had planned. The silver phoenix, still clutched in her pocket, felt less like a beacon of hope and more like a heavy, ironic joke. Days bled into a monotonous blur of forced walks, tasteless meals, and the suffocating silence that pressed down on her like a physical weight. Alex tried to find comfort in the familiar architecture, the oil paintings that adorned the walls, each brushstroke a memory of her parents' discerning taste. But even these echoes of the past felt tainted, their beauty a cruel mockery of her present predicament. Her mind, however, refused to surrender. It was a restless current, constantly searching for cracks in David's meticulously constructed prison. It was during these stretches of forced isolation that a pattern began to emerge, as subtle as a whisper on the wind, yet as sharp as a newly honed blade. Secretary Anna. Anna, with her neat bun, her perpetually serious expression, and her efficient, almost robotic movements, had been a fixture in the Vance household for decades. She was the quiet engine behind Jonathan's empire, the woman who knew every secret, every schedule, every nuance of his business dealings. Alex had always viewed Anna as an extension of her father, a loyal, invaluable asset. Now, however, the picture began to shift, revealing a darker, more insidious truth. Anna visited the estate with an unsettling frequency. She'd arrive in a sleek, unmarked black car, always alone, always with a stack of folders. Ostensibly, she was delivering company updates, seeking Alex's input on trivial matters, a thinly veiled pretense to maintain the illusion of Alex's status. But beneath the veneer of professionalism, Alex noticed things. The way Anna's eyes would linger on the security cameras, a fleeting, almost imperceptible glance. The way her conversations with Marcus would drop to hushed tones whenever Alex approached. The brief, almost imperceptible smiles exchanged between them, like conspirators sharing a secret jest. One afternoon, Alex, feigning a sudden stomach ailment, excused herself from a forced business update with Anna. From the bathroom window, a sliver of view through the thick curtains, she watched. Anna was speaking animatedly on her phone, her back to Alex, her voice a low murmur. But what truly sent a jolt through Alex was the casual intimacy of the posture, the relaxed slump of Anna's shoulders. It was a posture she'd never seen Anna adopt in her father's presence, always so prim, so deferential. A chill snaked down Alex's spine. This wasn't just a secretary making a business call. This was something far more personal, far more treacherous. The realization hit Alex like a physical blow. Anna was the traitor. The thought was so shocking, so fundamentally subversive to everything Alex had believed, that it left her reeling. The loyal, unassuming secretary, the silent pillar of her father's empire, was a snake in the grass. This betrayal cut deeper than David's overt malice, for it came from within, a poison festering at the heart of their trust. The memory of her father's lingering gaze on Anna during his ominous warning now resonated with a terrifying clarity. He hadn't just suspected, he had known. From that moment on, Alex's captivity transformed into an elaborate game of observation. She became a ghost within her own prison, her senses heightened, every action a calculated step. She noted Anna's habits, the brief moments she left her phone unattended on a side table while fetching documents or pouring coffee for David, who sometimes joined Anna at the estate, the times when Anna would step away to answer a call, her voice hushed, her back turned. Each opportunity was a potential crack in their carefully constructed facade. The breakthrough came during one of David's infrequent visits. He and Anna were deep in conversation in the living room, their voices hushed, their heads bent in conspiracy. Alex, having retired to her room with a book, listened intently. She heard David grumble about a stubborn board member and Anna's calm, reassuring voice. "Don't worry, David. He's been taken care of. Jonathan's old contacts are loyal to us now." A cold fury ignited within Alex. This wasn't just about money. It was about systematically dismantling her father's entire network, piece by insidious piece. Suddenly, David's phone rang and he stepped out onto the veranda, his back to the room. Anna's phone, a sleek, silver device, lay abandoned on the coffee table. This was it. Alex's heart pounded a frantic rhythm against her ribs. This was her chance. Moving like a shadow, Alex slipped from her room, her bare feet silent on the polished wooden floor. The corridor seemed to stretch for miles, each step an eternity. She could hear the murmur of David's voice from the veranda, the faint clinking of ice in a glass. Adrenaline surged through her veins, sharpening her focus. She reached the living room, her eyes darting towards the coffee table. The phone lay there, a silver sentinel. With trembling fingers, Alex snatched the phone. Her mind raced. What to look for? Texts? Emails? She knew Anna was meticulous. There had to be a way in. She tried a few common passwords, then, on a whim, typed in a sequence she'd seen Anna use for a security panel, a pattern of numbers related to Jonathan's old office building. It worked. The screen flickered to life, a treasure trove of incriminating evidence. Her fingers flew, snapping photos of every suspicious message. There were texts between Anna and David, discussing strategies to destabilize the company, detailing payoffs to various figures, even gloating over the success of the car accident. Emails revealed coded communications with offshore accounts, meticulously outlining the transfer of assets. The sheer audacity, the depth of their betrayal, made Alex's stomach churn. Anna, the quiet, almost invisible shadow, had been the architect of her father's downfall, a silent viper coiled in the heart of their home. Then her eyes landed on a particularly chilling message, a short cryptic text from David to Anna. It contained a string of alphanumeric characters followed by GPS 344522 N 118.2437W, and below it a sequence of initials JVEVALX, JV, Jonathan Vance, EV, Eleanor Vance, ALX. Alex. A cold dread, quickly replaced by a surge of desperate hope, washed over her. The GPS coordinates, her father's initials. This wasn't just a random message. This was a direct link, a breadcrumb trail. Her father had always used unique personal codes for important information, a habit born from years of dealing with corporate espionage. This sequence of initials was a signature, a proof of life. Her fingers trembled, snapping a photo of the message, committing the coordinates to memory. She was about to replace the phone when she heard David's footsteps approaching from the veranda. Panic seized her. She shoved the phone back onto the table, her heart a drum solo against her ribs, and sprinted back to her room, barely making it as the door creaked open. She collapsed onto her bed, feigning sleep, her breath ragged. She heard David's voice, then Anna's, their footsteps moving away. She waited, listening, until the silence of the house settled once more. Her hand instinctively went to her pocket, clutching the silver phoenix. It now felt lighter, infused with renewed purpose. The coordinates, the initials. Her father was alive. He had to be, and he was trying to reach her. The revelation of Anna's betrayal, while painful, had ignited a spark of defiance within Alex. She wasn't just a victim anymore. She was a detective, a survivor, armed with crucial evidence. The isolated estate, once a tomb, now felt like a launching pad. The game wasn't over. It had just begun its true, desperate phase. The thought of escape, once a distant fantasy, now burned with the fierce intensity of a wildfire. She had the proof. Now she just needed to find a way out. The coordinates pulsed in Alex's mind like a secret heartbeat, a silent hymn of hope. 34-0522N 118-2437W. The initials JV, EV, ALX were a sacred mantra. Her parents were alive. This knowledge, a fierce, exhilarating flame, scorched away the remnants of her fear. The mountain estate, once her prison, now felt like a launching pad, each silent hallway, an obstacle course to be conquered. The images on Anna's phone, the irrefutable evidence of betrayal, were the weapons in her arsenal. The time for hiding was over. The time for the phoenix to rise had come. Escape. The word buzzed in her ears, a dangerous symphony. Marcus was meticulous, his patrols predictable but unyielding. The windows were secured, the doors alarmed. Yet her father, a man who built empires on calculated risks, had instilled in her an instinct for finding the unseen exit, the overlooked loophole. She remembered the old, dusty blueprints of the estate, tucked away in the attic during happier times, a relic of a forgotten renovation. Among them, a faint, almost erased line had indicated a forgotten tunnel, a secret passage leading from the old wine cellar to a remote storage shed nestled deep within the overgrown woods. A relic of Prohibition-era whimsy, perhaps, or a contingency plan of her eccentric great-grandfather. It was a long shot, but it was a shot. That night, a storm raged outside, mirroring the tempest within Alex. Rain lashed against the windows and the wind howled like a banshee, its mournful cry providing a perfect cover. Marcus, lulled by the illusion of security and the relentless storm, was likely hunkered down, oblivious. This was her moment. She moved like a phantom, her bare feet silent on the cold stone floor of the basement. The air in the wine cellar was heavy with the scent of aged wood and damp earth. Dust motes danced in the faint beam of her phone's flashlight. Her fingers traced the rough-hewn stone walls, searching for the telltale seam. There, behind a precarious stack of cobweb-laden crates, was a faint outline, barely visible. With a grunt, she shoved aside a heavy, rusted shelf, revealing a narrow, wooden door almost swallowed by the wall. It creaked open, exhaling a breath of stale, cool air. The tunnel was a claustrophobic maw, black as pitch, smelling of mildew and forgotten secrets. Alex plunged into it, pushing aside spiderwebs that clung to her face like ghostly fingers. The darkness was absolute, a living thing. She moved by touch, her heart a frantic drum against her ribs. Minutes stretched into an eternity, each step a test of her resolve. Finally, a faint glimmer of moonlight filtered through a crack above, illuminating a small rusted door. With a surge of adrenaline, she pushed it open, emerging into the biting night air, rain plastering her hair to her face. She was free. Her first thought was to find someone, anyone she could trust. Her mind immediately leaped to Samuel "Sam" Reynolds, her father's former head of corporate security. Sam was a man forged in the crucible of clandestine operations, a retired Marine with eyes that saw through deception. He had always been fiercely loyal to Jonathan, a silent guardian angel in the background. Her father had often told her, If things ever go south, Alex, Sam is the only one you can truly count on. He carries no allegiances to corporate flags, only to what's right. Reaching Sam was another hurdle. She had no money, no working phone beyond the one with the incriminating photos. She walked through the rain-soaked wilderness, her clothes clinging to her, her muscles screaming in protest. The GPS coordinates led her not to a safe house, but to an abandoned industrial complex on the outskirts of the city, a ghostly skeleton of steel and rust. It was a place only someone with her father's intricate knowledge of urban decay and hidden safe points would choose. She managed to hail a worn-out taxi on the edge of the city, pleading with the skeptical driver, offering her mother's antique watch as collateral. He eyed her suspiciously, but the genuine desperation in her voice, coupled with the undeniable gleam of the watch, eventually swayed him. The journey to Sam's modest, unassuming house in a quiet suburban neighborhood felt like a pilgrimage. When she finally arrived, soaked and shivering, she found him tending to a small rose garden, his hands, once accustomed to firearms, now gently coaxing life from the soil. He looked up, his face, weathered by time and experience, registering, a flicker of surprise, then a deep, almost painful recognition. "Alex?" His voice was a low rumble, laced with an old grief. "My God, they said you were gone." "They were wrong, Sam," Alex whispered, her voice hoarse, a raw testament to her ordeal. "My parents, they're alive. And David, he's a monster." She showed him the photos on Anna's phone, the damning evidence. Sam's expression hardened with each incriminating image, his eyes narrowing into flinty slits. He listened intently as Alex recounted her captivity, Anna's betrayal, the secret signature, and the GPS coordinates. When she finished, a long silence hung between them, broken only by the rhythmic drip of rain from the eaves. "Jonathan always had a plan B," Sam finally said, his voice laced with a grim admiration. "And a plan C, D, and E, for good measure. He knew this day might come." He looked at the coordinates. "This is not just a location, Alex. It's a secure line. A rendezvous point. He's been waiting." Meanwhile, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing on his horizon, David Vance was basking in the golden glow of his perceived triumph. The grand ballroom of the Vance Corporation's headquarters in downtown Los Angeles was ablaze with light, a dazzling spectacle of power and newly acquired wealth. Journalists, corporate executives, and minor celebrities mingled, their chatter a celebratory hum. David, resplendent in a tailored tuxedo, stood on a raised dais, a microphone in his hand, a smug, almost beatific smile plastered across his face. He was about to give the speech of his life, officially announcing his permanent ascendancy to the CEO position, sealing his victory. He looked out at the sea of faces, a triumphant monarch surveying his new kingdom. Anna, elegantly dressed, stood discreetly to his side, her expression unreadable, a loyal shadow. "Ladies and gentlemen," David's voice boomed, amplified by the sound system, filling every corner of the vast hall. "It is with a heavy heart, yet also with a profound sense of duty, that I stand before you today. The tragic passing of my dear brother Jonathan and his beloved wife Eleanor has left an immeasurable void in our lives, but it is our responsibility to honor their legacy, to steer the Vance Corporation into a new era of prosperity." He paused, allowing the manufactured sentiment to sink in, savoring the hushed reverence that followed. Suddenly, a ripple of unease spread through the crowd. The massive projector screen behind David, which had been displaying the Vance Corporation logo, flickered. Then, it went black. A collective gasp rose from the audience, followed by confused murmurs. David's smile faltered, a flicker of irritation crossing his face. "Technical difficulties, I presume," he chuckled, attempting to regain control. But then the screen burst to life. It wasn't the corporate logo. It was a video, grainy at first, then sharpening into horrifying focus. The camera, hidden and steady, showed David and Anna in a dimly lit room, their voices clear, chillingly audible. The first clip. David, his face twisted in a sneer, instructing Marcus about the accident. "Make it look convincing, Marcus." Fire. Total wreckage. No survivors. A wave of shock rippled through the ballroom, followed by gasps of horror. People pointed, whispered, their faces paling. David's eyes widened in disbelief, his smug expression replaced by a mask of pure terror. Anna beside him froze, her elegant facade cracking into a kaleidoscope of fear. The video continued, a montage of their treachery. Anna's hushed phone calls, detailing financial manipulations, payoffs, and the systemic dismantling of Jonathan's alliances. David's, gloating over the forged documents, the chilling moment he ordered Alex's disposal. Each revelation was a hammer blow, shattering the illusion of the grieving patriarch, exposing him as a ruthless, calculating villain. The air in the ballroom crackled with tension, a palpable mixture of disbelief and outrage. David's face was a mask of furious denial, his body rigid with impotent rage. "This is a fabrication!" he roared, his voice cracking, but his words were drowned out by the escalating murmurs. "A malicious smear!" Just as the final damning clip faded from the screen, leaving a lingering image of David's malevolent smile, the grand double doors at the far end of the ballroom swung open with a dramatic flourish. All eyes turned. And then he appeared. CEO Jonathan Vance. He stood framed in the doorway, a figure of imposing authority. His posture was ramrod straight, his gaze, sharp and unwavering, swept across the stunned faces in the room. He wore a simple, dark suit, but his presence was a thunderclap, silencing the bewildered crowd. He looked thinner, perhaps a touch more weary, but undeniably alive. Undeniably Jonathan. A collective gasp, louder than any before, filled the hall. A sound of utter astonishment. It was as if a ghost had walked among them. David's jaw dropped, his face draining of all color. He staggered backward, a pathetic figure, his carefully constructed world imploding around him. Anna let out a small, strangled cry, her hands flying to her mouth. Jonathan took a slow, deliberate step forward, then another, his eyes fixed on his brother. "Hello, David," he said, his voice calm, yet radiating an undeniable power that resonated through the shocked silence. "Did you miss me?" Before David could even stammer a response, the main entrance to the ballroom burst open, and a swarm of federal agents, led by a stern-faced detective, flooded the room. They moved with swift, silent efficiency. "David Vance and Anna Petrova," the detective announced, his voice cutting through the stunned silence. "You are under arrest for conspiracy, fraud, attempted murder, and numerous other charges." Marcus, who had been attempting to blend into the background, suddenly found himself surrounded. The agents moved in, swiftly apprehending David, who struggled. Feebly, his face contorted in a mixture of rage and terror. Anna, pale and trembling, offered no resistance as handcuffs clicked around her wrists. The flash of cameras erupted, illuminating the scene in a strobe-like frenzy. Alex, hidden in the shadows near the entrance, watched the scene unfold. A wave of exhaustion, profound and absolute, washed over her. It was over. The nightmare was finally over. Her father was safe. The traitors had been exposed. The phoenix had not just risen, it had soared, leaving behind the ashes of deception and betrayal. But even in this moment of triumph, a flicker of complex emotion crossed her face as she watched her uncle, once a trusted family member, now a broken man, being led away in disgrace. The taste of victory was sweet, but tinged with a melancholic understanding of the human cost of greed. The opulent ballroom, moments ago a theater of David's hollow triumph, now shimmered with the electric aftermath of his downfall. The flash of cameras, the urgent voices of federal agents, and the stunned murmurs of the elite clientele swirled around Alex, a maelstrom of relief and raw emotion. She watched Marcus, David's silent enforcer, led away in handcuffs, his impassive face finally betraying a flicker of defeat. Then, her gaze locked onto David. He struggled against the agents, his eyes wide with a manic fury, a beast caught in a trap. He was no longer the composed, cunning uncle, but a desperate, broken man. And surprisingly, despite everything, a pang of something akin to sorrow, rather than triumph, pierced Alex's heart. He was family, after all, a twisted branch on her family tree, but family nonetheless. Jonathan, her father, now stood beside her, a beacon of strength and quiet power. His hand, warm and reassuring, settled on her shoulder. The weight of his presence was a balm to her battered spirit. They had done it. They had exposed the darkness, illuminated the truth. But the victory felt bittersweet, like nectar mixed with ash. Later that evening, after the last of the journalists had been shooed away and the legal formalities had begun to unfurl their intricate threads, Jonathan and Alex found themselves in the quiet sanctuary of his study, the same study where, weeks ago, he had first revealed David's treachery. Now the air was clearer, heavy not with secrets, but with the quiet understanding of shared ordeal. "Are you all right, Alex?" Jonathan's voice was gentle, a stark contrast to the thunderous command he had displayed hours earlier. He looked at her, his eyes, usually piercing, now soft with concern. The exhaustion etched onto his face was a testament to the strain of his own vanishing act, the meticulous planning and unwavering courage it must have taken to orchestrate such a complex ruse. Alex nodded, though her mind was a tangle of conflicting emotions. "I am, Dad, but, seeing him like that, David, it was difficult." She paused, searching for the right words. "Part of me wanted to cheer, to see him crushed. But another part—" She trailed off, her gaze distant. Jonathan understood. He always had. "Vengeance," he mused, his voice a low hum, "can be a tempting dish, Alex. It promises satisfaction, a balancing of the scales. But too often it leaves a hollow feeling, a lingering bitterness that can poison the victor as much as the vanquished." He looked at her, his expression profound. "True strength, my daughter, lies not just in conquering your enemies, but in mastering yourself, in choosing empathy over retribution when the choice is given." His words resonated deep within Alex. She had spent weeks fueled by a burning need for justice, for David to pay. But now, in the quiet aftermath, she realized the emptiness of that pursuit. What good was winning if it meant losing a piece of her own humanity? The phoenix, a symbol of rebirth from ashes, was not just about rising from destruction, but about transforming, becoming something new and better. The next day, a somber quiet hung over the city as news of David Vance's arrest dominated every headline. Anna, too, was a subject of widespread condemnation, her betrayal dissected in every corporate column. As the legal process began to grind forward, Alex found herself grappling with an unexpected resolve. She decided to visit David in prison. Jonathan, understanding her need for closure, had arranged it. The visiting room was sterile, cold, a stark reflection of the chasm that now separated them. David sat across from her, his usual arrogance replaced by a haunted, defeated look. His eyes, once sharp and cunning, now held a bewildered emptiness. "Alex," he rasped, his voice thin, "why are you here? To gloat?" His tone was laced with a bitter cynicism that still pricked her. Alex shook her head. "No, Uncle David, not to gloat." She looked him straight in the eye, her voice steady, filled with a quiet sadness. "I'm here because I want to understand. What happened to you? What made you choose this path? This wasn't the David I knew, the David who used to tell me bedtime stories, who taught me how to ride a bike." David flinched, a raw nerve exposed. He looked away, his gaze fixed on the grimy wall. "The company," he muttered, his voice barely audible. "Jonathan he always overshadowed me. Everything he touched turned to gold. I worked just as hard, Alex, but I was always in his shadow. Always the younger brother, the one who wasn't quite good enough." His words were a torrent of pent-up resentment, years of festering insecurity finally spilling out. I deserved it. The company. I deserved to be seen, to be important. Alex listened, her heart aching. It wasn't an excuse, but it was an explanation. The poisonous tendrils of envy and insecurity had choked out the last vestiges of the good man he once was. "But at what cost, Uncle David?" she asked, her voice soft. "My parents' lives? My life? Your freedom? Your soul?" He flinched again, a silent admission. He looked back at her, his eyes, for the first time, holding a flicker of something akin to regret. I don't know, Alex. I lost my way." The words were delivered with a surprising, almost painful vulnerability. "I hope you find it again, Uncle David," Alex said, rising from her chair. "I truly do." She left him there, not with a sense of triumph, but with a quiet understanding. Forgiveness wasn't about excusing his actions, but about releasing herself. From the bitterness that could consume her, it was a step towards her own healing. In the weeks that followed, the Vance Corporation underwent a seismic shift. Jonathan, true to his word, officially stepped down, transferring full control of the company to Alex. The news sent shockwaves through the corporate world. A young, inexperienced heiress taking the reins of a global conglomerate? Skepticism abounded. But those who knew Alex, who had witnessed her resilience and intelligence during the recent crisis, saw a different story. Under Alex's leadership, the Vance Corporation didn't just stabilize, it soared. She didn't merely follow in her father's footsteps, she forged her own path. She diversified the portfolio, investing heavily in sustainable technologies and ethical manufacturing, areas her father had always championed but never fully committed to. She established a foundation in her mother's name, dedicated to supporting victims of corporate fraud and promoting ethical leadership. Her decisions were bold, innovative, and driven by a moral compass that pointed true north. Jonathan, though, retired, remained a quiet mentor, a steady hand offering guidance when needed, but always allowing Alex the space to lead. Their relationship, deepened by the shared ordeal, blossomed into a profound partnership of respect and love. Alex proved herself not just a shrewd businesswoman, but a leader with a profound sense of responsibility, a compassionate heart, and an unwavering commitment to integrity. The company, once synonymous with old-world power, now embodied a new kind of strength, one built on transparency, innovation, and a fierce dedication to its people. The balance sheets reflected this shift, surging to new heights. The name Vance, once tarnished by betrayal, was now synonymous with progress and ethical leadership. The story ends not with a grand explosion or a final confrontation, but with a quiet affirmation of growth. Alex, standing on the precipice of a new horizon, gazed out from the penthouse office of the Vance Tower. The city lights twinkled below like a scattered galaxy, a vast, pulsating testament to human endeavor. She had faced down betrayal, stared into the abyss of despair and emerged, stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever. The silver phoenix, now worn on a delicate chain around her neck, gleamed softly, a constant reminder of the ordeal she had survived and the powerful transformation she had undergone. She was no longer just the inheritor. She was the architect of a new legacy, a true phoenix rising from the ashes, ready to face whatever challenges the future held. Thank you for listening to The Inheritor's Gambit. We hope this story of resilience, courage, and the complexities of human nature has resonated with you. It reminds us that even in the face of profound betrayal, the choice to rise, to forgive, and to build a better future always remains. Your courage, your integrity, and your ability to choose empathy can be your greatest inheritance. If you enjoyed this journey, please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and leave a comment below sharing your thoughts and what lessons you took from Alex's incredible story. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you for your support.